Here comes the theme song. Hey, you're listening to Trigger Warnings, challenging talk radio for the new year and the new world. I'm Chris Smith, and John Ross is on the line. I'm here in the high...
Speaking of the new theme song.
Yeah, we got a new theme song for the new year. You want to hear it again?
Well, you can do that. It sounds like the music that you would hear before a very seriously intended public affairs show on public radio.
Yes, it's challenging talk radio. And you know what's cool? The theme song changes every time.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Does it have its own algorithm or something?
I'm performing it live.
Oh. So what if we wanted it to sound? Is there a? Can you adapt it to different themes of programs? Like, let's say we were going to have a serious discussion about the Oscar nominees and how they reflect or don't responsiveness to last year's Black Lives Matters protest. Like, how would the theme go then?
You know, I could start pushing buttons, but people are tuning in because they want to hear our thoughts. This is Challenging Talk Radio, Chris Smith and John Ross. I'm here in the high desert of Colorado on the third floor.
Where the term high desert means some more than one thing.
It does mean more than one thing. Everything means more than one thing anymore. John Ross is in the Chicago suburbs.
I'm at sea level. I'm at sea level on the northwest side of Chicago, but it is an undisclosed location on the northwest side of Chicago because we're waiting for the tanks to roll in based on the presidential tweet from this week. So we have to all go to our undisclosed location. There is a run on the fallout shelter market all of a sudden. It's been dead for 40 years, 50 years, but it's making a comeback this week.
What materials are most popular? Concrete, reinforced steel?
MRE.
What?
Costco's very big. Costco's very big on MRE. Yeah, there's a whole meals ready to eat section at Costco. And there's an organic section and a gluten-free section. It's very important, right? Because that's very important for today's, healthy.
Are you making a joke? Are you telling me there's really gluten-free MREs being sold in the Chicago suburbs?
The thing is that I do get and sometimes purchase things from a catalog called the Sportsman's Guide, which is a really, really good company based out of St. Paul, Minnesota. And it's clearly run by a very pleasant right-wing survivalist guy who has the flag out and sells things like camo pajamas and things like that. But he does sell meals ready to eat. He sells all these like military guns and military pea coats and all these things. But he has MREs. You can buy MREs there. I'm sure that if you wanted gluten-free meals ready to eat, you could get them.
Well, here on Trigger Warnings, Challenging Talk Radio, John and I have been at it since before the 2016 presidential election. You can scroll back here on YouTube and check out our previous programs. We met when did we meet, John?
We met on the eve of the Blessed Inaugural, and we discussed
the Blessed. Wait a minute. The Blessed. Which one was that?
No, last week we met and we talked for a good hour about how the most important political activity and elections in the country are at the state and local level, and that's why Republicans are the overwhelmingly majority party in America with your colleague from Delaware County, Pennsylvania. And then we had a quiz about, both of us had quiz questions ready about the inaugural and various constitutional stuff.
Yes, our previous program was an epic journey. Now, it was not necessarily a Trigger Warnings production and is not available here on YouTube at the moment.
What?
Well, I'm working on that. That was not a production that took place in this facility, but necessarily on WFVR LP 96.5 FM.
True.
That is not what you're listening to, but in fact, Trigger Warnings.
That's right. We may not have the rights to that.
Well, no, I have the rights to it, but I don't have an actual recording of it because I was producing. It was the eve of the inaugural, and hopefully we'll get that on YouTube sometime. I know that those programs are archived, so that's a tricky thing. But yes, Jon and I have been at it for many months doing this podcast, but we've known each other for many years. That's what I was going to say. When did we meet, sir?
We met July 1st, 2010, or thereabouts.
What a different world it was then.
Was it really?
Well, anyway, we've been talking politics for a long time, and here on tonight's show, whenever you're listening, instead of bouncing some news articles between each other, we're going to do the top 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. We're going to review the Bill of Rights. I'm going to read them. Jon is going to tell me something about it that's new since the inauguration. New. We need
every single amendment.
Wow. Well, only the 10. We need something that's new.
Okay.
And I can help you out if it's a stumper. Okay. And if it's a stumper, you can make up an alt fact.
Well, yes. That's the thing. Everybody now is an improvisation artist. Anybody who utters anything in the public sphere, because anything as our president said, if you believe it, then it can be true. And if you're the president, you can order an investigation or a task force or whatever. And if you're just regular old folks like us, you can say, some people are saying that the Third Amendment is under attack. That's all we have to. I am ready. I feel much better. I am relieved. I'm refreshed. I have even found gluten-free meals ready to eat on the internet. I'm getting ready, and I'm also reading that Ted Cruz, during his presidential campaign, said that commanders would never have to provide them for their gluten-free soldiers. So I am ready. Hit me with your best shot.
All right. Well, you said something, and I want to draw attention to it. Everyone is an improvisation artist, and maybe it's because Facebook, Twitter, the social media creates flash in the pan type scenarios that the president too is complicit in playing along with. And that would be the natural follow up to a previous. We had a show a program where we talked about the death of experience. Like, you don't need to have been an elected official to ever have run for president or even win.
And you know what's fascinating about this, and it's okay because we are an open democracy. Well, we have been an open democracy. People can vote for whomever they want. It's wonderful. What's interesting is that you would never want, if I, God forbid, needed brain surgery for my 10-year-old, well, I might look to Ben Carson to do that. If I needed, Section 8 housing plan, I don't know if I would go to him, and now I'm forced to do that. We are now dealing with the equivalent of the raving lunatic in row 10A of the airplane flying the plane. And, we have done that. And given that, what I would suggest, given that all of us now need to be artists, of the improvisational and spin nature. I am proposing a new academic discipline.
Oh no!
For this administration alone, it's called a spin doctorate. You can get a really quick, like you go to school 3-4 weekends, once a month, and you can get a special doctoral degree in spin. We're going to have we're going to put out a job search for the chair. There's going to be an endowed chair. It's going to be the Spicer Chair of Spin Doctorate, and it's going to be great. And in fact, there's going to be all things around, alternate facts. We're going to have classes in state news generation, in how to make money off state news generation. There's going to be a special class taught by Steve Bannon, which is where you don't say anything at all. You just listen. I mean, this is a curriculum that I think not only is incredibly necessary, but I think we could make a mint off of it.
Advanced listening for the Fourth Estate. I like it, John. This is good.
Listening for the Fourth Estate, right? And it has a great acronym. It's called ALFI, Advanced Listening for the Fourth Estate. And all you do is sit there and listen. And it's fantastic. Well, you don't even have to listen. You just hear and pretend that you're listening. And it's fantastic.
It's going to be great. You are listening to Trigger Warnings, Challenging Talk Radio. John Ross is in the home of American Carnage, and I'm here in the high desert.
I am. I'm in the capital of American Carnage.
So look, we're going to be anti-raving lunatic. We could just babble on, as so many do. But I'm going to bounce an amendment to John, and he's going to tell us what's new. Ready? Number one.
I am ready to rumble.
Number 1, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. John, what's new?
Well, what's new is that Congress has not yet acted to counteract the administration's gag orders on multiple agencies, from the National Park Service to the Interior Department to scientists at the Department of Agriculture. So Congress is not yet technically violating this act or this amendment, but it has not yet acted to make sure that these things can go on as they are constitutionally endowed to do. So there you go. Are we going to ensure? Now, there are members of Congress who are specifically saying to federal employees, if you need, as Elijah Cummings did the other day, during he's the ranking member on the Oversight and Investigations Committee in the House. He actually got on television on Morning Joe and said, if this gag order is wrong, he also wrote a letter to the Attorney General about that, but he said if anybody in the federal government, any employee, needs to get information out to Congress, you call me directly. So that is a member of Congress acting to preserve many amendments of the Constitution, but specifically the freedom of speech and arguably for petitioning the government for redress of grievances. Done. Move on. Next amendment. What's next?
Next amendment? That's it? That's all we get? I like the idea that Congress is not acting to counteract what is being done in the executive branch, but that the individual members of Congress are starting to become rogue in the way that NASA is becoming rogue and the NPS is becoming rogue, and these entities that I haven't paid much in taxes because I've never made much in my life, but my meager tax money I know has been going to fund these federal programs, and now I'm being shut off from their spigots of information. So will the rogue government take over the real one.
Well, what's interesting is that among all these other things, it came out on Inauguration Day that, we talked about this a little bit last week, that there are roughly 4,000 political appointments the president has to make in the government, secretaries and boards and commissions and deputy secretaries, et cetera. And that because they really did not have a lot of people in certain agencies ready to go, either they couldn't find them or whatever, they asked 50 people, 50 senior bureaucrats most primarily at the State Department and Pentagon to stay on. Now, it was kind of an indefinite thing. They didn't expect it was going to be long-term because they really need to fill these things.
John, you sound like you're being hauled away. Are you okay there?
I did move. Anyway, they were then, so these people were asked to stay on, and then Monday or Tuesday, top people in the State Department, including a guy who was essentially the chief operating officer, the deputy secretary for administration, who goes back to the George W. Bush era, was on a plane to Rome for a conference and was fired right then and there and said, "You're not going to the conference. Turn the plane around," because it was a State Department plane. "Turn the plane around. Be out of the office tomorrow morning." Now, when that's reported by the media, that sounds very stiff and severe and extreme. That is the way a lot of these things work, but it's so strange that when you tell people not even a week early, we need you until we get the new Secretary of State and et cetera, and then you do this, it's kind of a weird shock. And again, maybe it is related to the First Amendment, or maybe it's just an employment practice that is common where there are politics involved, but that's kind of strange. Your opinion?
My opinion of the First Amendment? What's new?
Of that, as it relates to the First Amendment. Yeah.
You lost me. Who was on a plane?
The number 2 or 3 person at the State Department who had been asked to stay on Inauguration Day because they hadn't filled these positions in the government. They got thousands of jobs. They didn't fill it. So they were asked. They asked several people to stay on.
Yeah, I want to draw a distinction between the censure of government employees that were on the payroll January 19 and their condition today, and the condition of people that have never in their lives been a government employee, and the condition of their rights as stated in the First Amendment. I think that's a really important distinction. Yes, Trump is screwing with all kinds of government agents, and people are on a plane and suddenly, hey, you don't have a job, and turn around. And we're also doing that with people trying to get into the country as of today. But the condition of the freedom of speech of the press and the peaceably assemble, that condition, I just checked in to see what condition my condition was in. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Because I'm not a government employee. I've never been in collusion with that government. And the fact that government agencies are in some way developing and creating their own freedom of speech. The rogue NPS. We're not supposed to have a rogue NPS. It's supposed to serve the people. And that government agency has been subverted to such an extent that individuals with Twitter accounts on their mobile telephones are making decisions to represent that government agency. So as far as checking in to see what condition my First Amendment is in, it seems like there's been some major developments. Yes, idiots like Steve Bannon have been appointed to horrible positions and are acting terribly and telling the press to shut up. But the press have always been in on it. Some of those press gave Hillary a standing ovation, not even a year ago. So whatever kind of games are being played in the Brady briefing room, everybody is a suspect reality star when you turn on those channels. Every other channel seems to be having some really interesting stuff going on. including that peaceably assembling, right?
Well, certainly the march from last week. Well, I mean, let's just be clear in case those people who are listening do not have the acronyms under their thumbs. NPS is the National Park Service. The National Park Service participates in, including with agencies like the Central Intelligence Agency, the unofficial estimates of crowd size for events on government property. So the National Mall, the site of the inauguration, and the Capitol are part of the National Park Service, not the Capitol, but the mall. And the National Park Service takes pictures for posterity, for the National Archives, et cetera, of the scene on the mall. And when it sent pictures out from the exact same spot at just about the exact same time of day, time release, 2017 inauguration, 2013, et cetera, that showed a much larger crowd at Obama inauguration than Trump inauguration. That, of course, got us into the alternative facts and all that stuff. And then the first full day of his presidency, the President of the United States called the administrator of the National Park Service and said, I want you to give me better pictures that show what the crowds look like. So then they were shut down from tweeting, or they were shut down from tweeting, I think, Friday night. So, I mean, that's the litany of what's been going on in that as it relates to First Amendment. I mean, that's not even freedom of speech. If the National Park Service's job is to...
Wait a minute. The entity of the National Park Service, that entity, okay, that organization, does that entity have a freedom of speech?
Well, it has the freedom of speech under the Federal Whistleblower Protection Act, which supersedes any, executive order or political order from a government official.
Okay, that entity does not have the same constitutionally protected freedom of speech that an individual does. If as the Supreme Court has ruled many, many, many times since the beginning of the Republic, that a corporation has rights that are essentially equal, in many cases, to individuals, a government agency, being a corporate entity of a sort, you would think would have similar. Now, I do not know the exact constitutional premise and law around that, but there is a Whistleblower Protection Act that says if you have to get information out that falls under the guise of whistleblowing, not only are you protected for doing that as a government employee, but that right supersedes any dictate by a member of the executive branch. But wait a minute. Doing the work of the National Park Service via its Twitter account, its regular day-to-day, hey, the roads are closed today because of a snowstorm, that's not whistleblower stuff. That's why we have a Twitter account, to be able to tell you, hey, there's a snowstorm in this part of the park, don't drive through it. You know what I mean?
That's right.
So to gag that kind of communication between a federal agency and the citizens that paid for that agency, I can't believe we're invoking that kind of defiance. I can't.
Well, again, this is. I mean, you cannot. There is a lot of. There's a lot of Nixonian stuff going on here. However,
you won! John Ross won a prize. How many minutes into this program did John win? Yes, once he mentioned Nixon, I'm ready. John, it's time for a story. I didn't know. We need to get moving here. We've got 9 more amendments.
Wait a minute. So did the bird just come down with the secret word?
That's right. One of tonight's secret words. The secret word, you win a story time. Once upon a time, a man down in Texas heard Pat on the radio mention that the fact that our 2 youngsters would like to have a dog And believe it or not, the day before we left on this campaign trip, we got a message from Union Station in Baltimore saying they had a package for us. We went down to get it. You know what it was? John, you know what it was.
No, I don't. Why don't you tell me?
It was a little Cocker Spaniel dog in a crate that had been sent all the way from Texas, black and white, spotted. And our little girl, Tricia, the 6-year-old, named it Checkers. And you know, the kids, like all kids, love that dog. And I just want to say this right now, that regardless of what they say about it, we are going to keep it.
What about Pat's Republican cloth coat? When does that enter into this picture? I want to know.
Let's see if you win another secret word. Hey, you're listening.
Every amendment has its own secret word. Okay, good.
No. There's just certain, they're trigger words. Hey, and you're listening to Trigger Warnings, Challenging Talk Radio. John Ross, Chris Smith. The Bill of Rights.
I'm ready for. Are you going to mix me up on the amendments?
It's not like a showcase showdown. We're moving right through chronologically. Amendment 2. I
want to pass.
You can't cheer for it until I read it. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. John, what's new?
The update on that is because I can be selectively dyslexic. The Second Amendment obviously is about the right to arm bears, and the Education Secretary Designate, Madame DeVos, at her confirmation hearing on January 17th, when asked if there should not be any guns in schools, said, well, I was talking to my colleague, the senator from Wyoming, Mr. Enzi, and he told me about how they keep guns in one school to protect against grizzly bears. So yes, that is the update on the right to arm bears. In fact, Wyoming has a state law that forbids guns in, on, or around any schools, but that did not seem to matter to her because we have to protect ourselves against bears. And remember, who knows if the bear is in the woods or not? That's why we have to be armed, especially if the bears are armed. Did I win the prize?
Well, thank you for drawing our attention to the confirmation hearing of Betsy DeVos. If you didn't hear it, I will characterize it here as a new low in American rhetoric, in the way that we talk to each other, in the way that you expect the people on the floor of the Senate and the House to treat each other with dignity and respect and not to waste each other's time. And to just go there and just, hey, I'll fake it. I'll fake it. Conservative writer P.J. O'Rourke, there's a really good early short story of his. He writes about how he won a fellowship while he was in college. And he got horribly drunk the night before, and he forgot he had the interview the next morning. And he's got this big interview for this fellowship, and he stumbles into the interview, and they ask him, it's for some English or writing college fellowship, and it's a big interview, and he puts on a tie drunkenly, and you can taste the whiskey on his breath, and the first question they ask him is, name your favorite literary critic. And he says Henry David Thoreau. And they say he wasn't a literary critic, and he says, well, his whole life was a work of literary criticism. And P.J. O'Rourke, noted conservative, now NPR, bastion, he just hangs out there. But anyway, that's the kind of bullshit rhetoric that is now becoming acceptable from the lawn of the White House, from the Brady briefing room, and from just every other entity that we're supposed to respect. That's my take.
Well, see,
I'm sorry, I went off about it. It's not the Second Amendment, but that.
I would not. I think P.J. O'Rourke, more than being a conservative, is more of a libertarian critic. And
Wait a minute. Anybody that was moderately silent about Trump as he ate the GOP alive and has also written a book called Republican Party Reptile, I'm sorry, you're complicit. He's complicit. If he didn't speak up loudly enough for him to be heard in the public sphere, because he could have, then he's complicit. So I got to count him as a Trump supporter, no?
So you're invoking the Nixonian. Oh, I didn't win the prize. You're with us.
Oh, would you like John won a prize? He's pushing the limits. Yes, you win another
Actually,
prize.
that's what George W. Bush said right after 9/11. You're either for us or against us. See, this is what I mean. This is a problem that people on all extremes invoke. Is everything is all in, right? And while to a certain extent I agree with, I mean, like, for example, I'm wondering right now, why is Mario Rubio backing down and supporting Rex Tillerson? I don't like to pick on Rex Tillerson. I actually think Rex Tillerson is an interesting character. But, Mario Rubio makes a big think about Rex Tillerson and not being prepared and to talk about Russia and Putin as a war criminal, and then he votes for him, and he says, I'm going to vote for him again. Right now, the voices of Republican sanity, if that is not an oxymoron, I'm sorry, appear to be maybe Lindsey Graham, maybe John McCain. McCain's getting ready to be on. Where is Susan Collins from Maine, who almost gagged last summer over Trump? I don't really hear Susan Collins perking up here and being potentially the swing vote.
Okay, so maybe today's secret word is complicit.
Well, yeah, I have other amendments to get to that speak to that. So I'm going to.
Wonderful. Well, let's press on here on trigger warnings. Amendment 3. No, hey, and let me just say, we are not trying to be a comprehensive review of the Bill of Rights. I believe there is more nuance to the right to bear arms than was in any way discussed here. So stay tuned for future broadcasts.
What you're missing and what we should do next week is the Bill of Alt-Right. Go ahead.
Ooh, yes, you heard it here first. That's a second zinger out of John Ross today on trigger warnings. The first came in your spin doctorate, I believe.
Yes, a spin doctorate and then a Bill of Alt-Right. Yeah.
Okay, Amendment 3, no soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. Well,
this has never been ruled on, and this is only first of all, they needed 10. They had to have 10 because it was a nice round number. And
didn't they have 12? I thought they had 12, and then they whittled that down to 10.
No, 10. They got to 12 after that, but that was later. This was because this is what the British did. The British would knock on your door during colonial times and would say, "Okay, you need to give us room and board, and we have guns, and you don't." So this was put in to say, just to remind people that we wanted a civil government. Yes, what's updated on this is that we here in Chicago are preparing for the tanks to roll in which case we might have to quarter soldiers. So that's what we're preparing for, which is why we're searching on Costco.com for gluten-free and vegetarian meals ready to eat.
Amendment 4, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized.
Well, in the internet era with mass surveillance, you obviously can't have a warrant to search every effect, read, email, or text message or phone record. because everything's digital and everything can be pulled off of the cloud. And we know that phone companies and internet service providers and social media sites have either directly or by turning their head and saying, oops, I didn't notice that, giving or making available or not protecting the data of their clients from the federal government. That ain't getting better.
Yeah, and I guess this one is very troubling for me, and it's the phrase probable cause, because that could be an alt fact. Probable cause could be an alternative fact. By the definition as we know it, it's a convenient lie. It's an inconvenient truth. It's a distortion to the effect that we are able to use it to better our own ends or appear rhetorically stronger. That to me is what an alt fact is, and therefore probable cause. I mean, is an ice cap about to, crack in half and create a flood or not? Is the earth warming or cooling? Probable cause.
Right. Well, right. I mean, yeah, these are not search and seizure, but yes, probable cause.
Oh, I know. But we're down to the nuance of it, and I see that, and that phrase is a trigger to me.
Yes, I mean, and if only we could come up with a snarky, smarmy term for it, like spin doctorate or what was the other one? What was the other one? Spin doctorate and what?
There's an endowed chair of indoctrinate, and I created the course Advanced Listening for the Fourth Estate.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I just came up with another doozy, and we seem to have forgotten it. Well, it's on the recording.
Well, look, all right, moving on. We're almost halfway through, folks. You're listening to Trigger Warnings, Challenging Talk Radio. John Ross, Chris Smith, the Bill of Rights Showcase Showdown, Amendment 5. All men recognize the right of revolution, that is, the right to refuse allegiance to and to resist the government when tyranny or its inefficiency are great and unendurable. Don't talk over this amendment. Listen to this. I'm sorry, I didn't read it.
Shut up and listen.
That's right. How does it become a man to behave towards this American government today? I answer that he cannot, without disgrace, be associated with it. I cannot for an instant recognize that political organization as my government, which is the slaves' government also. All men recognize the right of revolution, that is, the right to refuse allegiance to and to resist the government when its tyranny or its inefficiency are great and unendurable. Isn't that lovely? I love that amendment.
That's a fantastic amendment. Which amendment is that?
That's Amendment 4.5. Didn't you know?
4.5? I did not know that.
Yes, executive order right here from the high desert. I've just added that to the U.S. Constitution. Get the notorious RBG on the line. John, what is that from? Any guesses?
Sounds like Orwell.
I dropped his name earlier in this program.
Steve Bannon wrote that? He's really good.
No, and it's not P.J. O'Rourke either.
Is it P.T. Barnum? Oh, no, his circus is gone. You dropped his name earlier?
Yes.
Richard Nixon, Groucho Marx, Karl Marx?
No, it's Henry David Thoreau, Civil Disobedience.
The famous literary critic.
What do you know? One more time, folks. Probably the most relevant and chew-onable sentence. The one that you could make a good meme out of. I cannot how does it become a man to behave towards this American government today? I cannot answer that One more time. Here's your meme quote. How does it become a man to behave towards this American government today? I answer that he cannot, without disgrace, be associated with it. I cannot for an instant recognize that political organization as my government, which is the slave's government also. Henry David Thoreau's Civil Disobedience.
Was that written specifically on the passage of the Fugitive Slave Law? It sounds like it.
I believe not especially. I think it was a little more generalized than that, honestly.
1849.
1849. Oh, yes. I mean, there's a lot about, that entered into his thinking. But I take this to be a larger patriotic statement. Thoreau first wrote Civil Disobedience as a lecture, which he delivered February 1848. It first appeared in print under the title of Nothing About the Slave Debate, Resistance. Listen, here's the original title, John, Resistance to Civil Government.
Yes. It was motivated in part by his disgust with slavery and the Mexican-American War. Because if you remember, the Mexican-American War was fought essentially to support the rights of slaveholders to expand their land into what was then part of Mexico, Texas. Now,
Right.
We don't learn that in school. We learn that the Alamo was the big bad Mexicans against the good guy Texans, and that they were martyrs because they were wiped out but Mexico did not have slavery at that time, and it was basically a war supporting an effort by the United States government, whose president at the time was a Southerner, to encroach illegally on free soil of a foreign nation, and it was literally people bringing slaves from the east into what was then Mexico, picking a fight and fighting, which is why Abe Lincoln resisted it. A lot of people didn't like the Mexican-American War, but we got Texas out of it. So there you go. So it was related to slavery.
It is, and let's not get caught up in the historical moment of this document. Of course, there's been better more bite-sized pieces of American rhetoric about why to disobey unjust laws. But I think it's about time that we up the stakes and up the ante and return to some of the classics. And I don't say that because they're dead white men. I say that because there are some great statements that have been made in the history of this country, and we are tweeting ourselves to death rhetorically.
Well, may I interject here, because I think you made a really good point. And I teach. I mean, we may or may not get to emoluments later. But what is interesting is that we are at a time now when a lot of these words that are clearly archaic. I mean, emoluments is as archaic as words get. But where people in their awakening / resistance to some of the things that they voted for, whether they voted for Trump or not, they are now realizing what some of those consequences are. And some of the words, I'm not talking about rhetoric, some of the words that are part of those definitions that go into, that are associated with these things, words like emolument, pecuniary, words like that are really archaic and are not in the 10,000 or so words that the average person has in his or her vocabulary, are now coming to the fore. And, when you get into things like the emolument clause and conflict of interest and ethics and whistleblowing, you have to go into the Federalist Papers, and you need to read what the framers of the Constitution.
All right. You're jumping the gun here. Okay,
I'm not. No, I am complimenting and supporting your point about Thoreau, because we are, this is getting many people to go back to our roots, to our constitutional roots, to our rhetorical roots, to the rhetorical infrastructure, the philosophical infrastructure of this country, which is all dead white men, many of whom held slaves. That to realize that there were some pretty impressive things that came out of it. There was some pretty good thinking that came out of these folks in putting these building blocks together. They left a lot of holes in them, such as slavery, and that's not to be written off as a whole. But, maybe this is good. Maybe as part of realizing and acting out rights as people rooted in a country founded on dissent, that we will return to some of these roots that, people are supposed to learn in civics and history classes, but they don't, because we teach them terribly. So maybe these are learning moments. Maybe this is 4 years of teachable and learning moments for a great many Americans, and that could be a good thing.
Well, I'm gonna go so far as to say the election of 2016 represented a continuation of juxtaposing America, or that is transposing America onto communication platforms where they can hear each other and talk to each other. During the Obama years, we went from sharing cat videos to sharing some pretty pungent stuff with each other. And now, will we continue to root out racism and hate via those platforms? I don't think we'll ever progress backwards to, let's just go back to the cat videos as far as Twitter and Facebook. We're learning to use these in new ways, and the way that we share information with each other. And also, I don't want to say we've exhausted our culture of information. God, goodness knows it's a, wellspring, and they'll always give us stuff to watch. But to what extent will user-created content drive the next 4 years? And that user-created content may talk about stuff like Thoreau or the Checkers speech.
This applies to this political constitutional awakening applies as well to people who support the administration. This is not a one-way thing. I mean, you got to be. You have to give equal time and access and encourage it to everyone. I mean, if people are supporting this administration, good for them. Read the Constitution, understand what's going on. I mean, this is not a partisan thing. This is a partisan, and I think it's very important, that we both, that people on all sides of every issue have these encrusted documents and infrastructures to use in their arguments. I would love to have a return to the public square and good, open debate and discussion about stuff among people who don't agree with each other. I would like that. I don't think that is possible in the social media mediated environment we've created, but I would like to have those. I would like those discussions to be part of the public sphere, because if they are, people are going to be much more attentive to what the government is doing, whether they generally support that government or whether they generally oppose the government. And I think that's really important here. And we talked about this months ago when Peggy Noonan and others were saying the true act of a patriot now is to step up and say, I've got to work with this government, even though I find it repressive and disgusting, because that's the sign of a patriot. Right? And, I think we're back to that now. The patriotism now has to be more than just, we hate these people in office and anybody associated with them, we need to get rid of them and oppose them. That's certainly a part of it. But there's a bigger thing to this that I believe is incumbent upon a citizen of a republic. And I use the word republic very intentionally.
I agree.
That's just a move. Where are we going next?
We're going to the Amendment 5. As we all know, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land of naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger, nor shall any person but Hillary Clinton be subject for the same offense to be twice be put in jeopardy or of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against him or herself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation.
Okay. Well, I don't have anything new on that except you brought up Hillary Clinton. And
I did not bring up Hillary Clinton. It's right here in front of me. It's in black and white, John. I can't make this up. No, I really did. I dropped her in. I'm sorry.
There were some people who were saying, why did the Clintons show up at the inauguration to acknowledge and respect the person who has threatened to throw her in jail? And I think the answer to that is that even if, well, we'll see whenever the current occupant leaves office if he really does believe in and support the peaceful transfer of power. But I think that's important. I think Hillary Clinton is gone and will soon be forgotten to a large extent. But
I think that's a shame. That's a shame because millions of Americans put their hope and faith and trust and money behind that woman. And if she doesn't open her mouth, then she's as bad as any of them.
Well, Obama already has opened her mouth.
Exactly.
He gave an interview on this about the Affordable Care Act and what to do.
If she would like to prove that she is not a snake, she's got every hour of every day to do so. And tweeting from a mansion about the Women's March if I were there, I would have taken that to be a slap in the face. She can't spare. What does she have to do? I mean, I'm not going to go any farther. It's a darn shame what happened. And it's a darn shame if she wants to fade into the sunset.
No, but here's what it is. She is, and I'm not justifying it, but she is following the age-old tradition of the person who loses the presidential race, especially in the way she lost it, fading into, not even riding off into the sunset, saying, I'm not waiting for the sunset, I'm just going to go take a back seat. Now, that we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I don't know.
Hey, speaking of back seats, I'm sure there's somebody listening saying, he just read the Fifth Amendment and they're going down some Hillary Clinton wormhole. John, in the next 4 years, I mean, what's new about people being deprived of life, liberty, and property without due process of law?
Well, if you're a dreamer and you're here protected under that executive order, you're worried. And in fact, there are, what was the number I heard? 16 million, is that right? 16 million Americans are part of a family that in one way or another is affected directly by, what is the acronym, DAPA, the Dreamer Act, the Dreamer Executive Order. So again, there are parts of the Constitution that conflict with each other and supersede one another. But if you are here as a tax-paying, productive citizen under that executive order, it's quite possible that your life, liberty, and property can be taken away from you at the snap of a finger, arguably without due process, including private property taken from you. But what I believe is going on in the mind of the president is we take care of the border, we tighten that up, we secure it, then maybe we can do something about immigration. That at least would make sense, even in a intelligent conservative mind. This is what many of them have said, and that's what many would think. So that's quite possible that the Fifth Amendment here could be invoked. If we are, I don't know what we're going to do with Syrian refugees who are already here. There's a possibility that those people who are here under the protection and auspices and asylum of the United States government, that the Fifth Amendment could be applied in kind of a funky way to them, and the rights to life, liberty, and property taken away from them. So that's possible.
There's a lot.
I didn't even start playing some of that depressing Russian music you were sharing a couple of weeks ago.
No, there's no time for that. There's no time. You are listening. You are listening to Trigger Warnings, Challenging Talk Radio. Jon Ross, Chris Smith. It's the Bill of Rights Showcase Showdown. We're running through them. John's letting me. I know it is. It's a show.
The Bill of Rights 2.0. Yes.
So Amendment 6, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witness against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have assistance of counsel for his defense.
Yeah.
What's new? Will we still have speedy and public trials?
That depends on what we do with how we define civil versus military law, or military combatants. There could easily be a redefinition of military combatants. So, for example, when we pick up terrorists or would-be terrorists on U.S. soil, it has been largely treated, certainly by the Obama administration, in civil courts, much more open than closed military courts. Although arguably that is a speedier trial when it goes through the military court process. That's possible.
Will we still inform people of the nature and cause of the accusations against them?
We have not at Guantanamo. They have been held without. They have been held certainly without speedy trials. If they are held indefinitely, that could constitute a lack of faithfulness to this amendment. But again, if they are treated as military combatants, they're then in the Fort Knox or Leavenworth or wherever we put people. So I mean, that's quite possible that this administration will.
Do you believe that we could be interring Americans over the next 4 years?
We've been interring Americans for the last 4 years. The question is, will we now bring back the black site?
Bring back the what?
A black site, where we would take people off in foreign countries like Poland, and we certainly have them in Poland, where we would take suspected terrorists and put them in detention in friendly countries where we don't have to follow such laws. This is something that the White House has brought up this week. That let's have terror, let's have torture. I like waterboarding. I like black sites. Now the question is, will the Secretary of Defense? He is your key here. Will he stand up to the president or whoever and say, if you want to go ahead with torture when I told you it is wrong and illegal, I will leave the Pentagon. That's the interesting relationship to watch, because I think by any standard, the Secretary of Defense, Mattis, is pretty impressive, and is certainly the most powerful person in the cabinet. And, you know, if we're talking about, I mean, the president has said, well, I think waterboarding is okay, but if Mattis says it isn't, okay, I'm going to defer to him. I don't know how long that'll last. So there's your Fifth Amendment, and quite possibly the Seventh.
And once again, the line between the rules that apply to civilians and the rules that apply to the military, it's getting blurry as you speak.
Well, no, I don't think it is blurry. I think what you do is if you, well, it may, but I mean, in these cases, if you treat them as military combatants, you don't have to follow these civil procedures. They're much more rigid. They're much more secretive for obvious reasons in the military context. So
this is turning very dark. This is turning very, very dark. Let's keep going. Amendment 7. In suits at common law where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. What's new?
I don't think there's anything new in. I think what we should do, though, is we should look at the inflation indicator and update $20 from 1787 value to 2017.
Why have we not done that?
Because we believe many of us believe in the rhetorical infallibility and literal original intent.
Amendment E. No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of Congress, accept of any present emolument, office, or title of any kind whatever from any king, prince, or foreign state. Amendment E.
Hey, wait a minute. That's not an amendment.
I just added it. It's.
How did you get there?
I stuck it in there. I stuck it between 7 and 8.
That's what she said.
It's Amendment 7E.
It's Amendment 7E. Well, I thought until about 2 weeks ago that emoluments were things that make your skin feel soft when you shave or put on moisturizer. Little did I know that there was a related word called emolument. Again, one of these great archaic words nobody uses to describe the nature and the root of the lawsuit, or the one lawsuit and many yet to come, that have been filed already against the President of the United States. An emolument is a tip or a bonus or a commission or anything above and beyond the salary one is receiving. The whole nature of emolument as a constitutional provision goes back into the Federalist Papers. Jackson wrote about it. Hamilton wrote about it. Monroe wrote about it. That in the day before republic, and we are a republic, and a republic ostensibly is a government of the people, where your job and your ability to retain your job in and for the people is determined by merit and performance, and not your bloodline, not your, are you part of a royal family, etc. And basically in the old days, kings, monarchs, Louis XVI was really good at it, would basically pay off ministers from foreign nations for negotiating good trade deals or good deals of any kind with him. Ben Franklin, for example, got a diamond-encrusted photo of Louis. John Jay got something from the King of Spain for his services. Now that does not mean that they were bribed. That does not mean that they negotiated a bad deal because they were expecting some really nice gifts. But what the Amalian clause says is no titles, nothing, and no, and that if you're getting any gift from a foreign government or any payment or any emolument, anything that could be considered above and beyond your salary, whether you take your salary or not, because President Trump is not taking a dime to be president, you have to go to Congress and get approval of the gift. Congress has to approve any gift taken by a member of the federal government. Congress literally must approve it. And the essence of this is that because the President of the United States still owns, he has not divested or put into a blind trust his holdings, he has turned them over to his sons, because he still owns property, say, a couple of blocks from the White House, his hotel, on land leased from the federal government, a foreign visitor or dignitary can say, let's stay at the Trump Hotel. Let's have a nice dinner in the Trump Hotel. Oh, our hotel bill of $1,000. Well, that'll impress the president. And when we go to the White House to meet with the third-level functionary, we can make clear that we stayed at the Trump Hotel, and maybe that will curry favor with the president or the people under him. And very cleverly, when at the press conference, when Trump announced how he was turning the business over to his sons, which he did not divest, his lawyer got up and said, I don't think any of the founding fathers thought an emolument would apply to paying your hotel bill. Because the argument is that if you are using the Trump Hotel, Washington, forget that it's leased in a federal building, which is a different conflict of interest, and that becomes a topic of conversation, could that curry favor with the president? And the Trump organization, therefore the president, somehow gets a piece of your hotel bill. The Trump people said they're going to turn over profit from these things to the federal government. But a hotel bill is not necessarily profit. That's why the emolument clause exists. That's why it's there, because the framers were concerned about the influence of foreign governments, political influence, monetary influence, and because in a republic, it's pretty easy. The only reason why you're there is because you have done it by merit and you have a salary for it. It's pretty easy to think about taking bribes to, get a nicer house or have a better standard of living. They were worried about it. They were really worried about it, and that's why this is in our Constitution. It's a brilliant, brilliant act of foresight on the part of the framers, and it has never been tested at this level. There have been many opinions by attorneys general, comptrollers general that have basically supported this, but it has never been applied to the executive. And this is very Nixonian again in its scope, because Nixon believed and then confirmed once he was out of office to David Frost in those famous interviews that if the president does it, it can't be illegal. Trump has said the same thing as it relates to financial disclosures and conflicts of interest.
Okay, here's your prize. Here's your prize. Stop. This will be an open administration. Open to new ideas. Open to men and women of both parties. Open to the critics as well as those who support us. We want to bridge the generation gap. We want to bridge the gap between races. We want to bring America together. That's your prize.
Oh, who said that?
Well, I'm just going to tell you that's your prize. You want to know who and when?
Yeah, sure.
The when will give it to you. November 5, 1968.
Oh, well, that was Nixon's acceptance speech when he was elected. Yeah.
More than 73 million people voted in that election, which was a lot at the time.
73 million in 1968. Yeah.
Hey, the Emoluments Clause, also called the Title of Nobility Clause. John, thank you for all the thoughts on that, because I believe...
Look, this is brilliant in its conception. It really is. Because this really, I mean, again, if you're a conservative, if you're a liberal, if you're a Trump person, if you're an anti-Trump person, this is really important to understand the Federalist Papers and the roots of our constitutional system and the nature of being a republic and what a republic is. Republican with a small r. I hope that the controversies that have been brought out by the unusual nature of this new administration and fears, many of them overstoked of him and of it, are getting people to go back and look at how we got here as a republic and why we're a republic. And there are a lot of things in the Constitution that aren't addressed and aren't addressed specifically enough and that were intentionally left out, and et cetera. And we need to speak about them. But, I mean, this one is really, really good. And it's really important to understand this in the context of the history in which it was written and on which we were founded. That monarchs and kings used to buy people off and used to take incredible liberties with their idea of divine right. It's really important.
It's Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8.
Clause 8.
Yes. And I'll read it one more time and then we'll progress. Go ahead.
This is about the roots, the Republican with a small r root of anti monarchy, anti-authoritarianism. Very important. Go. Sorry.
No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of Congress, accept of any present emolument, office, or title of any kind whatever from any king, prince, or foreign state. Do check it out, because it sounds like this is what they call a growing edge, or maybe even low-hanging fruit inside of our Constitution. Let's keep going. Amendment 8. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. John, we kind of touched on this earlier.
Yes, I think we can move on.
Amendment 9. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people.
Yeah, you can't use it's not a zero-sum game, it's a positive-sum game. You can't use your constitutional rights to deny others their rights. I don't think there's much in the Ninth Amendment that has been litigated. I really don't think that there's much to this. I really don't know. There were a couple of suits against this, about the Hatch Act, for example, which is that federal employees can't participate in elections. That I really can't. This kind of gets to the rights of civil servants more, in the courts. I guess it means that federal employees have no fewer or different rights than others, but that they can be regulated. I don't know. This, I suppose, could be applied in some ways, or prospectively to the idea of gag rules and gag orders against certain agencies. But I think that's more of a First Amendment issue. I don't know.
I've had people online. I've seen friends of mine talking about when is it appropriate to punch a Nazi.
Yes, we have talked about that.
Well, you and I have talked about it, but these people didn't know that until now. And when is it okay to punch a Nazi? I don't know if we have time to get into that entire question right now, but that seems like denying or disparaging rights of others to not get punched in the nose, despite
I
there
think
being Nazis.
That's right. I think that they have the right to be Nazis. They have the right to speak and protest, and just as they don't have a right to punch people in the mouths because they don't agree with their Nazi position, they also have the right not to be punched in the mouth because they are.
But Congress, our elected representatives, do not have the right to not act to counteract.
Oh, they have the right to not counteract. They do.
Well, do I have the right to add in Amendment 9Q, which is tonight's quiz?
Oh, by the way, advise and consent, which is not part of the Ninth Amendment, has been it's in the Constitution. And Mitch McConnell said last year when the president appointed Merrick Garland, and people said, Merrick who? The Senate said, well, that's advise and consent. Or Mitch McConnell said, well, that's advise and consent. We're not doing anything about it. That's advise and consent under the Constitution. Unfortunately, I think he was right. But anyway, please, what is Clause 9Q of that?
Amendment 9Q, well, we already kind of hit on the first quiz question, which is the long answer essay question. When is it okay to punch a Nazi? Only in the Brady briefing room, or only when you're not going to alienate moderate Nazis, or none of the above, all of the above? Maybe we'll chew on that one next week, but the tonight's three multiple choice quiz questions for you, John.
Okay.
Number one, the most, who said this? That Donald Trump was, quote, the most horrible thing that could have been elected today. Was it A, Miss Universe, B, Angela Merkel, C, Pat Leahy, or D, Anonymous?
Anonymous.
That's correct. Question number two. Rogue NASA T-shirt sales benefit A, a variety of science education nonprofits that work in K through 12, B, Media Matters, C, the money is split between Girls Who Code and a group called NMSI, or none of the above?
I'm going to guess it's none of the above.
No, it's Girls Who Code and NMSI. And finally, me too. And finally, your third quiz question. Who, just before we recorded this program, declared it to be the year of the cock on Twitter? Was it A, Donald? The year of the cock. I mean, it's Chinese New Year, so it's the year of the rooster. But this person went on and declared it the year of the cock. Was it A, Donald J. Trump, B, Mitch McConnell, C, Jimmy Fallon, D, Pat Leahy, E, the Loch Ness Monster, or F, Stephen Colbert?
Oh, it's definitely Colbert.
It definitely was. It definitely was. There's Amendment 9Q here on Trigger Warnings. John Ross, Chris Smith, we've been walking through the entire Bill of Rights, and it's been, I think, enlightening.
No, that was pre-Bill of Rights. You can't talk about the Enlightenment. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people, or to the people.
Yeah, I'll tell you exactly how this is going to play out in the next 4 years, or probably the next 4 months. The challenges to Roe versus Wade are going to come from the state, from state laws, and many of them are specious, and many of them are intentionally written speciously and poorly with holes in them, so they can be litigated up the ladder. And when, if, but probably when, that ninth justice gets on the Supreme Court, and he is a rootin' tootin', hard charging pro-lifer, you will then have, prospectively, the path from specious state anti-abortion laws up to the Supreme Court for a definitive or near definitive ruling on a case that will take us directly to Roe v. Wade. And frankly, I thought Roe v. Wade were too late to get across the Potomac.
Oh, did you write that?
Oh.
Is that you? Is that you?
That was me doing Groucho on Roe v. Wade. Yes, I know that's sad.
Man, you heard it here. You heard it here first, folks. Look, I'm going to say that I understand why abortion is such a divisive issue, and I understand why people feel strongly on either side. I understand that. But I look forward to this country not being dominated by that issue. I could weep about the things we've ignored in the name of the rights of the unborn. It is very, very sad. If these people get their way, and I'm sorry to say that, but these people, those people, us, if we get our way, whoever you are, once that's done and over with, what kind of country do you want to live in? That's what I want to ask the living, the people that have homes and addresses right now on the streets. Those people need attention as well. So I look forward to this country getting over that issue somehow.
Well, you know, what is really, I mean, you know, obviously what happened Friday at the Right to Life rally, the Right to Life March, the annual event in Washington, was that all the arguments about crowd size on previous events, and that specifically were referenced to the Right to Life March, earned that event more press and more attention. The bigger issue, the one that is of tremendous political signaling and significance, is that for the first time ever, a president or vice president spoke in person to that group. Reagan, George W. Bush had given recorded messages from the White House to them. Mike Pence was right there, spoke to the event. That's a clear signal that the nominee, the justice nominee who comes out, we are told it's next Thursday, is going to be someone who is with them. And then the question is, who is going to stand up to that? And Mitch McConnell made a very good argument the other day. Well, wait a minute. There were two Obama appointees in the first term, Sotomayor and Kagan, and they sailed through. There were no filibusters. We would expect the same treatment be accorded to this president's nominees, and he said that we are not going to change the filibuster rules. So he is, in his own cagey way, holding out that olive branch, saying, Democrats, you need to have a fair debate, but we want to vote on this. So, you know, this could be the last of the filibuster if the Democrats do it. And there's no doubt that there's going to be a nominee the three who have been named as the most likely candidates, and that's been tipped off for a reason, to run it by the Right to Life people who are in town this weekend in Washington. They're clearly the person who is put forth is going to be one of them. And how interesting is it that Trump, who declared his own promiscuity 20 years ago or so as his personal Vietnam, that he has now become the agent of the Right to Life movement.
Puppet, John, puppet.
Did you say puppet or fuck it? You said puppet.
No, I said puppet. You know, like a Charlie McCarthy doll sitting on Mike Pence's lap.
Yeah.
He's a puppet.
Well,
They hired a reality television star to get their way.
Right, and you have to. I mean, I'm cynical in this in a certain way. You have to give the right to life folks credit.
Sure.
Because they said, you know what? We're not going to judge people on their behavior. We're going to judge them on their politics. And if Hillary Clinton's president, even though she's a fairly religious person, we know what we're going to get, and we don't care. We don't care how many crotches Trump has grabbed if he's with us, and he's going to give us what we want, and he's going to give us what we want because he's afraid we're not going to trust him. Otherwise, we'll put our meat behind him. And that's so. I mean, you have to give them credit.
You say we'll put our meat behind him?
Well,
to describe the religious right getting behind Trump, we'll put our meat behind them. I think that was pretty funny.
I'm sorry, that was a bad cocktail of.
Oh, that was great. That was great.
But I mean, you got to give them credit for saying, okay, we have one issue we care about. We're gonna go all in with the candidate who's going to give us that. We don't really care what he does on his personal time, with his personal life, etc. Because the liberals never cared what Bill Clinton did with his personal time, because on policy and politics, he supported their issues. And, they are making a valid analogy, because liberals defended, and women defended Bill Clinton like crazy on his personal behavior because he was with them on issues. You wouldn't want to be alone in a room with Bill Clinton, but if you were trying to get your issues through, women's issues, parental leave, abortion, all kinds of things, you would, as long as you weren't alone in the room with him, you put your money in Bill Clinton. And so this is very similar, at least in their frame. I mean, it's the same thing. We don't care if Donald Trump is a serial molester of women. We don't really care. If he's supporting our issues and he doesn't do it while he's in the White House or we don't know about it, we're with him and we're going to get what we want. And that'll make him more subservient to us, because he doesn't want to lose our support for his reelection. Same thing. I mean, it's just, this is the legacy of the dirty politics of the 80s and 90s. And it really started with Robert Bork, I think.
Oh, it started before
that. And this is where we are. It's where we are. I mean,
listen to this. Listen. The president may be right in how he reads the Constitution, but he may be wrong. He may also be wrong. And if he is wrong, who is there to tell him so? If there is no one, then the president, of course, is free to pursue his course of erroneous interpretations. What then becomes of our constitutional form of government? So when counsel for the president in his brief states that that this case goes to the heart of our basic constitutional system, we agree. Because in our view, this nation's constitutional form of government is in serious jeopardy if the president, any president, is to say that the Constitution means what he says it does, and that there is no one, not even the Supreme Court, to tell him otherwise. You know where that came from, John?
I heard it, but I can't say from whom. Was it your friend Pat Leahy?
It was not Pat Leahy. Any other guesses?
Al Franken.
The person on the other end of that was, this was an exchange between William O. Douglas and...
Oh, Justice Douglas. Well, this sounds like...
That's right. Special Prosecutor Jaworski.
Yeah, this has to do with executive privilege. So you're going to here's another relatively archaic or oldie but goodie term you're going to hear a lot of, and this is again why it's Dixonian, what's going on, executive privilege. By the way, I don't know if you know about this. Refugees were detained at airports
Yes.
overnight.
Yes.
They're out of Iraq.
All right, we're going to leave it there. You've been listening to Trigger Warnings. John Ross, Chris Smith. John, have a blessed week.
Oh, it will be blessed. Thank you so much.
Liberate your mind by any means necessary. Oh, and science is real.
No, it isn't.